Salutations from space and aloha from Earth, friends. Happy Wednesday to you. Miércoles, Mercury's Day. It's 11:33 a.m. Pacific time, which means it is time for Starry Telling Hour. Fun day today for many reasons. One is it's Leo full moon, at least if we use the 12 sign system known as Tropical Zodiac, and another is I'm happy to have Jen Ingress visiting us today to talk Year of the Snake. Jen's not on in this exact moment because we had a bit of a delay and some technical weirdness. While we wait for her to come in, I would love if you who are already here might just say hello in the comments sections below or to the side or wherever that shows for you. I guess the question I might have for each of you is, where on earth are you currently, and how do you plan to roar for this Leo full moon? Hello, Olive from Texas. I'm so glad you're here. And Nadine from Baja. Yeah, full moon time for us. And a full moon in the Aquarius lunation, if we speak tropical zodiac, which means we are in this timing of Chinese New Year's still. And so I'm really excited for Jen Ingress to come and kind of speak about that a bit. And I have many questions for Jen in regards to the timing of the solely lunar calendar and also the solar terms in China. So I'm excited to hear from her about these things, and especially about the energetic frequencies for this year of the wood snake. Got tea water boiling right now, and I don't break it out often, but we're going to go with a pu'er from 1965. Not much of this stuff left. It's gold around here, but 60 years ago, that would be the last time when wood snake year was around. So we have hello from snowy St. Louis. Greetings. Winter here from San Francisco, and Nancy from Michigan. Eugene, Oregon in the house. Washington, Stockton, California, not far away. Western Massachusetts. Missoula, Montana, a snake. All right, Jen, well, let's see if that was enough time to stall. Let's see how our delay's going. I think we might be live. Let's put that away and find out. How you doing?
Hi, everyone.
Yay,
Great.
nice. We've defeated the algorithms. It's so nice to see you, Jen. Thank you so much for joining me here in Storytelling.
Likewise. Oh, it's a pleasure.
Maybe you could tell folks
excited.
who don't know about you and your work a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. I am a Western Eastern astrologer and Feng Shui practitioner, and I am also by training a professional educator, and I love animals and nature. And I was listening to one of your previous episodes with Dr. Anne, the historian, and I love how you mentioned archaeoastronomy, because that's something that I'm also very interested in.
I love that. Did you?
So I do, yeah.
You're in Toronto, Canada, right, Jen?
That's right.
Did you grow up in Canada?
Yes, I did.
One thing I like.
I went.
Sorry, friends. So we have a little bit of a talking to Mars delay here. So you're going to hear more interruptions than intended for sure. My apologies about that, Jen. I love that you're here on February 12th, if we play with Gregorian dates anyway, because I know you to be a practitioner of two sets of 12s, one being the 12 signs of the tropical zodiac and another being the 12 animals of of the four pillars and what we call Chinese astrology. I'm very interested in knowing which came first for you.
That's, I would say, the same time. It was my family who had a feng shui practitioner who also practiced Western and Chinese. So it was pretty much the same time. But in terms of my formal studies, it would have been Western. But I was always exposed to the Chinese astrology being part of my heritage. And then I sought out, while I was doing my Western astrological studies at the International Academy of Astrology, I was also studying with a Toronto, Hong Kong master, David Lee, who is now retired, and he had clients, bank clients, like the company, the banking institutions were his clients. And then I also studied with Shelley Wu. And since I've amassed many Chinese astrological, cosmological resources in addition to the Western ones. And I've also studied medical astrology at the STA.
Brilliant. And I saw when I was visiting your website recently, which for folks to know is jeningress.com. I will put that web address in the comments below because I know you're going to want to head over and check out Jen's work and book a consultation. But I saw that you offer like natal chart readings and also Batsi, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, so please correct
No,
me.
it's right. Yeah.
I'm trying. But four pillars, Chinese astrology readings. Do you combine the two as well?
Yes, yes. And actually, a friend and mentor, Marilyn Mazzotta, who's also in Ontario, I did a little mini reading for her, and she found it. There was something in the reading that she said that it didn't show in the Western, and that would be one of the animals in her chart. Really explained something that in Western, she didn't feel that it had come up in that way.
Love
So
it.
I feel like either it's going to reinforce your Western chart, which for me, I think it does. I see certain parallels in terms of challenges. It's explained both in my Batji and my Western. And if not, it will enlighten you and give you maybe a different nugget that hasn't yet come up. And
I
I
love
think,
that
yeah,
so much. I mean, there's something just even in normal everyday language, right? When you describe a scene in two different languages, you can still see the same image, but it comes to life in different ways. And we get like more of a panoramic view of it, if you will.
for sure.
Well, Jen, I think because I have so many questions for you that will get kind of astronomical, technical, calendar, kung fu. Let's save that for later and give the people what they came for.
Oh,
I
okay.
would
All
love for
right.
you to share with us a bit about the snake. I would love, like, later, I want to ask you, like you just said, your animals, right? I think a lot of people assume there's just one of the year that you're
Exactly.
born. And some of my questions have to do with, well, when does the year really begin? But let's save some of that stuff. And maybe you could just tell us a bit about the energies of the snake and about
Sure.
the wood snake. And I don't know if you got to hear me, but I'm drinking a tea from China, from Yunnan province. That
Oh,
was um, I don't know if it was picked or first sold or what, but in 1965. So going back 60 years
awesome.
to the last time we were in this
Beautiful.
same shift, the same vibration. Um, I have not yet had a guest share slides in this particular venue. So let's see how that works. And then
Okay. Well,
I'll plan to just put myself to sleep and let you
oh, that's
take
funny.
it away for a bit.
I actually, my slides were ordered knowing that you have knowledge and uh, skill with astronomy and mythology. I kind of organized my slides um, for that, but I'm happy to start with what listeners want to hear, which are what does the year of the snake have in store for us?
Yeah, and I would just invite you to start where you want as well, Jen. I think
That's
the
okay.
people want what you want. All right.
um, am I able to share screen?
I wonder.
Oh,
So,
it says shared.
is there a button down at the bottom that says present on your
Yes.
side?
Oh, share screen. It's right there. Okay. Screen sharing.
And there's a chance that I might have to add your slides to the stage or something. I'm using this StreamYard device, which lets me beam to a few places at the same time, but I'm not nearly as familiar with it as I am with Zoom.
Do,
Oh,
do
yeah,
you
here we go.
see do you see the
Yeah,
slides?
beautiful. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. All
So
right, well, I'm
we're
going to be here listening, Jen, and just call me
oh
back.
no, stay. Don't go to sleep. The snake compels us to be present and self-aware. We have 12 animals of the zodiac, and they do follow a Jupiter cycle in terms of each year is graced by one of the 12 animals. So for 2025, February 4th, which follows the solar term, the Chinese had 24 solar terms, which were basically 24 months, but they were really 12 big months, and each uh, in the middle at 15 days was the smaller month. So it was really like 12 months, but divided in two. So 1 month, well, the two solar terms would basically cover one of our months, kind of thing, but they weren't overlapped in terms of when our months start. Um,
Yeah, I mean, a good
and
way to see that is that they actually interact with what we in the West know as the tropical zodiac, right? Like, so the spring begins when the sun reaches what we call 15 degrees tropical Aquarius, and they're not
yes,
15-day divisions, right? They're actually 15-degree divisions of the sun's travel. I just learned about that last year, and I was so excited to see that. So sorry to interrupt you, but do
no,
you
no,
know?
please go ahead. I love, yeah.
Yeah, so like one thing that I learned last year, like I had always assumed that the energy shift at Chinese New Year with a new moon or the visible young moon. But what I was taught, and I was wondering if this is true or how most people work, that it's actually about the beginning of spring, which I know this year was like Gregorian February 3rd, but a better way for those of us who play with astrology here to know it is just the sun at 15 degrees tropical Aquarius. I was in Japan actually where I got this pot, and when I got this pot
Oh,
was
beautiful.
was on January 1st some years ago. And they're actually celebrating the shift on January 1st in
Yes.
Japan, which just seems so weird to me, you know. But when do you celebrate it? I'm sure there's a ceremony around Chinese New Year and with the moon, but do you see that the shift like in this year from dragon to snake happens with the solar term?
Yes. So culturally, Chinese New Year was January 29th because that's the new moon of the lunar calendar. But energetically and astrologically, it's usually February 4th or February 5th. It can vary, but it's usually February 4th, 3rd, 4th, or 5th. And I didn't know that until I was studying astrology and Chinese astrology. So I think the solar term, that is more something that astrologers or um, metaphysicians would consider, whereas culturally, uh, it's celebrated on the new moon. So for family dinners and um, the whole tradition of giving lucky red envelopes and having new clothes and preparing for the new energy, that's done um, usually before the lunar new year. But I grew up in Canada, and what I understand is um, in China or Hong Kong, the celebrations last, can last like 2 weeks. So it's like a very prolonged celebration. And so when I do my feng shui placements, it's the shift happens from the dragon to the snake on the solar term. And the Chinese used celestial longitude. So that would be at 300 and it's either 335 degrees of celestial longitude. I think I got that right. It's either 335 or
315 probably,
yes,
because they're
thank you.
likely
Correct.
measuring from what we call zero Aries, or where the
Yes.
ecliptic crosses the equator moving northwards, right? Like, a fun thing is when modern astronomers come at me with your zodiac's fake, I just ask them, where do you measure celestial longitude from? It's like, oh, well, we call that Aries, you know? Yeah, so
Thank you.
11 signs from Aries, or 11 times 30 degrees, really 10 times 30 brings us to 300 degrees. And then we add 15 to get to 15
Thank you.
Aquarius.
Thank you for that. And so these animals are based on a 12-year cycle of Jupiter, but they also represent our daily cycle of time. So we have 24 singular 1 hour sections, and the ancient time is using double hours. So each of the animals governs a 2 hour period throughout the 24-hour day. So 2 times 12 is 24. So right now we are basically 9 minutes away from the hour of the goat, and about, well, where I am, and entering the hour of the double period of the monkey.
Can I ask a couple of questions there?
Yes.
Maybe we will do this as interrupting in interrogation style.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's intrigued me because I often see that people will run 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. as the day, and 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. as the night. Um, and of course, that convention and even like 60-minute hours are way younger than this astrology, right? And these ways of keeping time. So I'm wondering, and I don't expect you to know the answer, and I wonder if we even do, like, when it would have shifted from what in the West we call planetary hours to civil hours of 60 minutes each, because it really feels like it should be from sunrise to sunset for day, and from sunset to sunrise for night. And then in the sister, as you know, Jen, in magical time, what we'll do is we will divide those daylight hours into equal 12 divisions, but they might, like in the wintertime, only be 40 civil minutes long because the day is shorter than the night. And of course, the opposite is true in the spring and the summer. Have you seen any systems that reflect that actually wait for the sun to rise? I mean, if we were using a Western astrological device, we could use the sun through the Placidus houses, for example, to
Right.
track hours in that way.
That's a great question. I feel like when the concept of like natural time, like when we are in tune with the electromagnetic shifts of the earth, which is like linked to sunrise and sunset. I think in cultures where it's it's not necessarily like an imposed system, like we're talking about time, but in terms of, I think there's cultures that um, observe or celebrate or have ceremony at that sunrise, because in terms of our negative ions, which are supporting our health and vitality, that science tells us the positive ions, which are like your static electricity and plastics and stuff like that, that doesn't have life energy. The negative ions are highest at sunrise and sunset. So I'm not aware of what I would call like an external imposed system that I mean, the other thing that I think about that you mentioned is Placidus, which is the ascendant is marked when when it's sunrise. But in terms of a system that starts the day varying from sunrise, that changes over the course of a year. I'm not aware of that. But I do also want to mention that this system of double hours is not is found in other cultures as well. I believe, I can't remember which other cultures, maybe I don't want to say necessarily, but I kind of want to say the Babylonians. And in terms of the 60, I believe the Sumerians used the 60, they counted in 60s.
Yeah,
The
sexagesimal.
sexagenary, and yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
there,
there were so many traditions like China, Egypt, India, maybe ancient Greece that had 12-hour days and 12-hour nights. I mean, even before like this kind of melting pot merging in the Hellenistic times. So, and like that's just an intriguing thing to consider of like where does the 12ness come from? I mean, many are sourcing 12 signs in the Jupiter cycle as you have, or
yes,
in the kind
yes.
of 12 lunations in a year, but maybe then we have 12 houses come out of that, and 12 houses in a way imply double hours if you want 12
Mm,
hours by day and 12 hours by night. I mean, a lot of that stuff's quite mysterious, but it is really cool to see how many different systems like honor 12ness and
yes.
found their way there. And I guess, I mean, in a sense, in astrology, as we follow the sun through the houses, this wouldn't be true for every house system, but we also have double hours in that way. And then there's that kind of, to speak astrological terms, kind of secondary progression where we compare days to years, because the
Yeah,
solar terms, they're kind of like double hours too, right? Where
right.
every month has two terms, or every 30
Exactly.
days has
Yes,
15.
that's right. And I also want to mention that Bruce Schofield, he's written books, American astrology, which also has their own 12 animals. Some that are similar, but to the Chinese, but they have alligator or crocodile, and they have uh,
Dear.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
but there's
otter,
13, but
otter.
there's 13 in those systems.
Oh, is it 13? I thought it
Uh-huh.
was 12.
Yeah, and there's and on another calendar there's 19.
Beautiful.
That's more like the year count, but the kind of sacred count is 260 days,
Yeah.
and 13, well, no, 20, 13 20-day divisions. So there's 20
Okay.
narwhals, which would be like these animals. Yeah, and they counted in 20s there, and so kind of a different trip.
Which is interesting because the Jupiter Saturn cycle is 20 years, is it not?
It is ish, right? And then it's kind
Mhm.
of 60, but also not. They're more like 59 years.
Mhm.
So yeah, it gets a little, some of the inaccuracies between, so like say for example our system in Western astrology that I know you know well, Jen, of annual profections, which is a 12-year system of perfecting the chart, or let's just say the ascendant through the signs, like that's precisely 12 in its accounting technique, where Jupiter's really 11.86 years,
Sure.
and that
Because
difference,
of the
it's like so
perfect.
negligible between 11.86 years and 12 years. But once you get to four times that, like we tend to have our fourth Jupiter return at 47 years old instead of
Mhm.
48. And then the big Jupiter return is 83 instead of 84. So I've always wondered about this, because I so often hear, like my first teacher, Daniel Jamari, always says, yeah, China, it's like the Jupiter cycle. And I'm like, is that historic though? Because these were some of the best astronomers like ever to walk on Earth, like back in the day. And of course they would have known Jupiter's not precisely 12. But
They
sometimes,
did.
oh cool. And were you taught that by your teachers, or have
Um,
you studied ancient records like Western astrologers
so
do these days too?
so the ancient Chinese, astronomy and astrology, they call it the mandate of heaven. And back then it was imperialism. There was a emperor, just like in the Babylonians, ancient Greek, in Egypt. And the mandate of heaven, the premise was the ruler needed to be in sync and cosmological harmony with the heavens or the universe, and that the planets, the stars, the moon, the eclipses, those were all messages. And it was a timing system that they felt that they needed to be able to predict or know so that they could rule accordingly. Otherwise, they would be overthrown or go to war, or there'd be some calamity like famine and that kind of thing. So astronomy was a state secret. There are some similarities between astronomy, the Babylonian astronomy, and Chinese astronomy. And one of them is that it was not like today where it's accessible. I mean, Western astrology was also for a privileged class as well at some point, like mundane astrology. So there is apparently the longest record, like unbroken record, I should say, of astronomy by the ancient Chinese astronomers, because it was such a serious thing that the astronomers and astrologers were really part of the imperial court, and the calendar was like, it was sacred. So normal peasants or farmers, like, you couldn't access it or publish it. It was very serious consequences. One author who's slipping my mind, I have a bunch of his books, Derek Walters, I believe he wrote that it would be punishable by death to even try to access them if you were not a court astronomer. So this was like top secret, highly like protected, because it had to do with the rulership of the emperor. And having that knowledge was equated to maintaining power, because the maintenance of their position had to be aligned and with the cosmos. Oh, hello. Uh-oh.
I was muted.
Sorry. Okay.
Probably if you knew the secrets, you could predict what the emperor and what governance would do, like if you were
Yes.
going to have a coup or something like that. So obviously these solar terms were about the Earth-Sun relationship, following the sun through Earth's sky and signs. And of course, the lunar year about the moon phases, so Earth, Moon, and
Yes,
Sun.
and that's one thing that gets people very confused. And I also want to go back to Jupiter, because with the obsession of constantly watching the sky, there were astronomers whose jobs were purely to watch continually the sky, like watch in the night, watch in the day. They always had somebody like a sentry kind of, but
Did it
watching the
pay
sky.
well?
Don't know. I
I want that
probably,
gig.
if you missed it and fell asleep and you missed some important comet, oh, you would have been big. Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah, we
right.
see some of that in Babylon too, like these
Yeah,
just pages of the astronomers like writing excuses for why they missed the new moon or something. So, I mean, obviously they were following Jupiter, but were they following all of the planets as well? Was there
yes,
something about the planets and the constellations that would speak
yes.
energetically like we work in Western astrology?
So they were very much aware of the cosmic sky, the planets. They called the ecliptic the yellow path, and the Milky Way the silver, or the cosmic river.
Wow.
They just going back to Jupiter, they tracked Jupiter and knew about the retrogrades, and they with the cycles we were talking about, it's because Jupiter retrogrades. So what the Chinese did was they created a mathematical model of Jupiter following the rate of Jupiter, never going retrograde. And it's
Hmm.
still used today in feng shui. It's called the Tai Siu. And Tai Siu moves every year. And that
That's
is,
like mean Jupiter,
yes,
basically.
yes, yes,
Interesting.
yes. And just deviating or going off on a tangent with Uranian astrology, which is using points, there's a whole other system of Chinese astrology called Jiwei Doshu, or purple star astrology, or emperor star astrology, which is originally based on constellations, but then mathematical points. So kind of like Uranian. And
Wow.
that system uses what they call 12 palaces, and it is connected to the 12 animals, but it's not Bat G. So these 12 animals are in the Bat G system, which is 4 pillars, because there's a pillar for your year, your month, your day, and your hour. And I have a slide for that. Um,
I'm wishing I could get back to not having us in the corner of your slides, but I pushed a button and I can't
Okay,
unpush
it's
it.
okay. So we have the 4 pillars here, and um, the Trinity, the number 3, which is very pervasive through many different other creeds and systems of belief, um, are also in the ancient Chinese cosmology, which is Taoist. And the 3 is heaven, earth, and person. And the pillar is to unite life on earth and in heaven. So the pillar is literally a pillar between earth and heaven, and that's us. And so the 4 pillars represent us, our life, and the aspects of an individual, so that we can, it's heaven's imprint on the individual. And then the earth is our feng shui, or terrestrial astrology, mapping the Big Dipper. The Big Dipper was a very important, um, they call them fixed stars, but the night sky changes, as you know. The view of the northern sky changes according to season, and the Chinese use the Big Dipper like a giant hour clock. So the Big Dipper had 4 major positions at spring, summer solstice, fall equinox, and winter. And from that, the other system of Chinese astrology, the 28 lunar mansions, surround the circumpolar enclosure that were stars that reflected the imperial affairs in the imperial palace on earth. So they were very much using the macrocosm and microcosm, that the universe, that the having cosmological harmony with the universe and the seasons and the cycle of the movement of the Big Dipper and the lunar mansions, that was very important. And you asked another question about, where were we going with that? The planets. So they were very much aware of the planets, but they didn't project them onto the ecliptic like we do, like the Egyptians and Babylonians, and then ancient Greece. So they looked at the planets, and they did call conjunctions entanglements. And what they really paid attention to, and again, this was all for mundane purposes, what were when their 5 planets would be in one lunar mansion. That was like really important, and that's documented in history. And that just kind of takes me back to um, the earlier, the slides, that when we go back, when we look at this system, we're going back at least to the Shang dynasty, which is about 1766 years before Common Era. And prior to the Shah dynasty, and prior to that, we are going into the mythological and mythological era, including what would be um, when they say the story of a great flood, it sounds like kind of Noah's Ark flood, and that, you know, so they experienced it as well. And then there's mythical figures that are the directions and the five great emperors, which are really the directions, and the Chinese include center as a direction. So I just wanted to couch the system that we're going to be looking at, um, the timing of the 12, and as well as the system of 10 heavenly stems, which are the timing of the heavens. They are recorded on these Shang dynasty oracle bones, which I have it in a different image. And this one is just to ground the viewers that in Western astrology, we're using the ecliptic and the horizon to make our chart. Whereas if you look up here, the Big Dipper or Ursa Major is like the big turning arm of a clock. And the ancient Chinese, they used a celestial North Star. And because of the precession of the equinoxes, that pole star, 4,000 or 5,000 years ago is not the same pole star today. And back then it was Alpha Draconis.
Right. So we're coming out year of the dragon. I wonder if that's related. The lunar mansions would be ecliptic oriented, right, Jen? Because we're following the moon and the planets through that kind of.
Yes, but they also have the enclosure. So there's this image here. This is the
So amazing.
enclosure, and this is the so in here we have the emperor in the very center, and there's these walls, east and west walls, which are all stars, and each of these stars represent a role or an individual in the imperial court, like not only the emperor, but like his advisor and his concubines and the prince and the person in charge of this. And so the astronomers, they would watch for any sign, so change of color or blinking or a little fog, and if there was an irregularity, that was a sign that something was amiss. So like the star that was the official, if it kind of dimmed or flickered in an irregular way, they might interpret that as that official is going to betray the emperor, or he's not doing his job. So we have to address that. And can you imagine being that person like today
No,
and going, oh my gosh, my star's flickering?
I cannot.
And so eclipses were also viewed as like a battle between the sun and the moon, and those were
Mm.
perceived as uh, negative omens, like in mundane astrology.
Do you know how
Traditional.
old this map is? This is like going back
Oh yeah, this is.
5,000.
I think this is from the. I have to check because I
Well,
think it's from the
like
Song Dynasty.
I'm looking at where the equinox is. So see in the upper right where the two circles cross.
The upper
Because
right.
one, like the
Oh
circle
yeah.
that's concentric with the center would be the equator, and then the one that's off center would be the ecliptic.
Uh-huh.
And so where they cross are the equinox points. So I'm trying to like translate into the constellations as I know them, right? I'm trying to connect these dots differently and then see like it, maybe that's like when the equinox was with the ram. It's hard to tell, but I've wanted to sit with somebody who knows these old
Yes,
constellational
I
maps
can
because they're so
find.
amazing.
I believe this one is probably common era. Because this one would have been developed over time, and so I think this was from the Song Dynasty. So somewhere, probably, I have to double check that. Um,
How many lunar
but
mansions are there?
So 28, and what's very unique about this, as you can see, so the lunar mansions are around the enclosure, and they are unequal divisions. So some are as small as 1 or 2 degrees, like this one right here, like Beak on the lower bottom right corner. I don't know if you can see my cursor.
Yeah, yep, we can.
Okay. And then some are much larger. So that is something that is different than the Mansels and the Yoidish or Vedic system. And so
Interesting.
the one very big difference is that the ancient Chinese uh, is a circumpolar system, because the cradle of ancient civilization is kind of like right where the Yellow River and Mongolia, so it's quite north. Like we're talking like 52 degrees latitude and in a
Mm.
mountainous region. So the view of the ecliptic is not consistent. And unlike an ancient Greek and the Babylonians, they didn't really uh, track like heliacal rise,
Mm.
because it wasn't a consistent view of the horizon. It was a very mountainous region. So they relied on circumpolar, which are stars that are visible throughout the night sky year
Right.
round.
And stars that are on parallels. The Babylonians did as well.
Mhm.
And the Mula Pin, which many people kind of source for the proto Zodiac and the path of the moon. But they also talked about these three bands of the heavens called Enlil and Anu and Enki, where Enlil, who's a air god, is high stuff, and Enki, who's an earth god, is low stuff, and
Very good.
Anu is the middle,
That's
right? So that would be like an equatorial or circumpolar
Yes,
system. That's
yes,
ancient, right? Declinations, parallels, all
yes.
that stuff. We kind of lose it in astrology. So I love to know that that's kind of at the heart of this Chinese
Yeah.
cosmology.
And I've in some other discussions with colleague Dan Beck, talking about when it's a conjunction, we look at the conjunction by latitude, but should it be a conjunction by latitude and longitude?
Right. And
That's
so the lunar
another.
mansions, are they listed in right ascension? Do you know that that's getting pretty nerdy in
I
the
think
astronomy?
so. I have to double check, but I think you have a very good sense of like mapping astronomy. And so the lunar mansions were around the moon and the positions of the moon. So basically, this is meridian, the lunar mansions. If you think of like an
Mm.
orange and slicing it and the arms of an umbrella, so it kind of went. The lunar mansions were like, at Christmas, I love those orange chocolates, that you kind of break and then you get the little slices. Like each little, those are like the lunar mansions.
Mm,
So I
mm,
don't think they were flat, like planar. I think they were like
mm.
um, they have them on meridian. So yeah, I don't know if I'm answering the question. I'm
No,
not.
you totally are. Well, so they must have been aware of precession pretty early in the
Yes.
game if they were tracking like North Pole as like the Emperor's Palace, right? Like seeing that shift in just a couple, oh, I don't know, not generations, but ancestry, like through different, what do you call that? Like an age of a
Well,
human
yeah,
being?
and just like the Kali Yugas,
Mm,
the Chinese had very large chunks of time. Like an era is like 10,000 or 100 10,000 years. I
Wow.
have it in a slide here.
Oh, I'm excited to see that as well.
Um,
Thank you so much for putting these beautiful slides together,
oh, my
Jen, and bringing
pleasure.
them to the space. I want to put up that you can find Jen Ingress at jeningress.com and put that on the screen so you can all visit Jen's site. I'm realizing it's rude for me to have left my branding on the screen when guests come, so I
No,
just
not at all. Not at all. But 10,800 years, and each of these animals oversee a year. And um, just like waxing and waning in a cycle, you have the growing and culminating phase and then the closing phase. So right now, apparently humanity is in the closing, the second half. So um, rat, ox, tiger, rabbit, dragon, snake, that's the upper heaven, and then lower heaven is horse, goat, and so we're somewhere around here. And they say that monkey is when humanity is somewhat doomed. I mean, I read that in one of the metaphysical astrology books, um, and I thought that was just interesting because right now we're in a Kali Yuga that I
Mm,
think the Kali Yuga is, ego and greed and it and then we can kind of see that we're bombarded by we're bombarded, even if we don't want to buy more, get the latest technology, upgrade, and we're almost forced to do it.
yeah,
um
we also say
but
the most materialistic, the least connected to the divine, shortest lifespans, and some say we're coming out of it. There's cool math here, because 12 of well, first of all, 108 is 12 times 9.
oh,
It's the atomic weight of silver. The radius of the
wow.
moon is
Wow,
1080 miles. We can go on and on. But if you
I
multiply
love it.
that by 12, so 10,800 years times 12, bringing the 12 back in,
Yeah, I have to get my
is
calculator.
129,600 years. And that's 5 precessional cycles. And so it seems to me that this somehow would be linked to the precession of the equinoxes, but they're looking at, for some reason, 5 of those cycles, which, by the
Oh,
way, like the Maya might as well. There's a lot of confusion there. Um, and then if we do 5 precessional cycles divided by 12, you get this period of time.
and
Um,
this is one of the biggest uh groups of cycles, and then they break it down to smaller ones that
cool.
I would have to go back and check my sources. But I just want to just um, go back to this time period, and this is around later is when the yin yang is first documented in Book of Changes. But there is a cosmological, a Taoist creation story that sounds like some other ones in different creeds, where in the beginning there was just nothing. And I know, Brett, with numerology, so that nothing can be represented by 0. And then out of that nothing became infinite potentiality, like a singular undifferentiated, and that would be like 1, so that's unity. And then from that unity, if you take in the yin yang, a yang is a solid bar. And if we take a bar like a gnomon or a sundial, we get light and shadow. And so when we put that 1 and we divide it, we get 2, and that is the yin yang. And the yin yang is a symbol that a lot of people recognize, and it's a Taoist symbol that represents interconnectedness and dependentness in duality. So that's why we have in the upper half a little bit of the opposite, and then vice versa. And this can also represent the sun over the course of a year. So we have here our summer equinox and spring equinox. Summer solstice, winter solstice, and then if we go across, we have our equal half and half, which is our spring equinoxes and fall equinoxes. So I thought that was another interesting analogy of light and dark. And the yang is the sunny side of the mountain, and the yin is the shady side. And there's so many more analogies that come from that, like active, quiet, and yin and yang. And this is just to show that we have the Dipper in here. And the ancient Chinese had, I believe, like 283 constellations, and they were kind of documenting constellations a little about 200 years earlier than Hipparchus, and that forms the 88 constellations. So the ancient Chinese had many more constellations, but like kind of fewer stars. And there's really about 3 constellations that were recognized that were all the same, basically Orion, the Big Dipper, and I think it was, sorry, it's slipping my mind. They called it the fire, Antares. That those stars also, the pattern and the recognition were recognized by many other ancient cultures,
Did they see it as
including
a
the Egyptians, the
scorpion?
Greeks, and indigenous cultures around the world. And so there's a creation myth as well. So this unity was an egg, and Pangu came out of this egg. And this looks like a pillar, doesn't it? So here's the human separating earth and heaven. And so that's like that human little figure in the 4 pillars. And so this is a kind of a myth of that numerical cosmology. And from the Pangu, here is the symbol on the left for moon and sun. He gave rise to a couple, a brother sister, Fuji and Nuiwa. And this is, they're depicted entwined as serpents, serpent bodies entwined, and with human upper parts. And that can also represent Fuji, the sun, and then Noiwa, the moon. And I don't know about you, but up here kind of looks like a sun here to me, and down here could be the moon. And it looks like these little dots here, they look like constellations or some kind of figures of constellations. I mean, constellations are really like connecting dots in the sky. It's really what they did, right? So the snake, and so Fuji is accredited to bringing civilization, like writing and things that come with civilization, like societal rules and writing and community. And Noiwa, she is about she brought about marriage. And so these are mythical creatures. And so the serpent, the snake in Chinese astrology and in the East is a very mystical figure, energy. So this year, and the snake qualities are mystical because the snake needs the sun. It's a cold-blooded reptile, and it takes time to warm up. So the hour of the snake in Chinese astrology is from 9 to 11, because that's when the sun has heated the earth. And some snakes will bathe in the sun. And so they're affiliated with sun and life. And the dragon and the snake together are the mystical life force connected archetypes of the 12 animals of the zodiac. And both are transformative. The snake sheds its skin. And so with mysticism and a connection to life, they are known to be wise, cautious, but snakes can be very still, and then they can move very quickly and strike very intentionally. So they are very wise, cautious, but they are very good observers, and they are very sensitive because amphibians and reptiles, they are very, they can are the first ones to die in an ecosystem that isn't healthy because they absorb toxins. So their pores, their pores are very porous. So this is a year where we are going to have heightened intuition. Snake individuals also have a good eye for authenticity and good quality standards, and they are very good. They because they are very specific and cautious, but very observant. They form a trinity with the ox and the monkey, and they form a commerce and business emphasis together. When you have the snake, monkey, and ox together, that is a sign of business and commerce. So this snake individual has a business acumen, and they are both yin and yang, depending on the perspective, because dragon is a yang animal and snake is a yin, but snake carries the element of fire, and it's a yang fire, because next year it's going to be horse, and horse carries yin fire. So there is this duality with the snake, because snakes can be nocturnal or diurnal. Some will strangle their prey, and some will inject poison, and they will poison the blood. And that is connected to, taking like a life force for the snake in the sense of like biology. It's a predatorial animal, but they are slow moving, but they can also move very quickly and strike with intent. So the wood heavenly stem element of the year, wood feeds fire. So this year, the snake energy is really enhanced and um, empowered. Unlike the year of the dragon is always an animal of empowerment, but because it was a wood element that grounds the dragon, there was more control. It was a more kind of controlled dragon energy, because dragons are very creative, and they need to do things their own way. They make great CEOs or bosses, and they really need to be, or they will seek being at the forefront, because it is an imperial symbol. And the reason why I want to bring up the dragon is because historians recognize an influence, or recognize that the Chinese dragon seemed to first be depicted like a snake and evolved from a snake representation. Where did that go? Snake representation. Oh, I know I have it. Oh, here it is. The snake representation here. So this is like an early, very from the Hongshan culture. So this is like 6,000 years ago, because it's 47,000 before Common Era. So this was an early depiction of a dragon, and to me, it looks very much like a serpent. So the snake and the serpent they bring together a focus of metaphysics, mysticism, transformation, empowerment. And the snake animal is related or represented by the hexagram of 6 solid lines, which is strength. And the dragon hexagram is 5 yang lines with 1 broken line at the very bottom, and that is the hexagram for transformation. And the hexagram for the snake, which is strength, is one of energy, vitality. It's like an increase. And the wood is elevating that snake archetype and snake energy for this year. So this year, the wood, this is yin wood. So whenever you have a snake year, the element is always going to be yin. And whenever you have a dragon year, the element is always going to be yang. And so yin wood is very creative. Both yin and yang wood are about growth and progression and fast change. It's a sign of creativity, learning. So this is a year where I think a lot of people are going to be learning about themselves, or it's a good time to develop self-cultivation about like learning about your heart, like what makes you happy, because the snake is a fire energy, and fire in traditional medicine, Chinese medicine, is the heart, and wood is the liver. So it is a year to focus on what feeds your spirit and your heart, your vitality. And I think COVID may have helped people in some ways, because a lot of people ended up working from home and discovered they really like working from home. And that has kind of this hybrid of either work from home or work partly from home and partly in the office. It's become more prominent because of 2020 of shutdown. What else can I say? So the yin wood is represented by shrubs, vines, blade of grass, opposed to the yang wood, which is like a sequoia tree. It grows straight and upwards. It's got goals, and so does yin wood, but it's more non-linear than like a tree growing upward and branching out in the branching fashion. And vines represent networking. So this is a year that I think people are going to be expanding their networks. I think it's a good time to um, socialize. People are going to feel more wanting to connect with their networks or expanding their networks. And I think this will be very beneficial for business as well as for a sense of community. And I was reading a quote from an Indigenous leader talking about what spirituality is. And spirituality isn't this rosy, I sit in my little comfy zone and I'm happy forever. It's about weathering the difficulties and finding um, a balance and a peace, even though things are not ideal or things seem very chaotic and unsettling. It's how do we find our strength to find joy amongst all the chaos and tense climate that I think a lot of us are noticing uh, in our countries and around the world. So I think um, focusing on taking care of ourselves, and because the snake sheds its skin and it can attack very pointedly, this is a time to really prioritize what's important and align our actions so that we don't carry the things that we don't need, and in that way we can make more room for the things that are important to us, both physically, spiritually, and mentally. And I just want to go back to the creation story with the snake and the numerology, that this is a depiction that kind of summarizes uh, the principle of Chinese metaphysics and where the I Ching divinatory 64 hexagrams come from, which are all around on the very outer uh, center. And the trigrams, which are made up of a solid yang line and a broken line, which is also echoing that trinity of three, they form the direction. So east, west, north, south, and the northeast, southeast, southwest, northwest. And these trigrams form um, the 64 hexagrams, as well as the 5 elements, which are where the phases, which is where the wood, fire, earth, metal, and water come from. So this 5 makes a cycle of 10 because we have 5 phases that each have a yin and yang expression. So we have a yang wood, a yin wood, and then a yang fire, a yin fire, and then a yang metal and a yin metal, and then a yang earth, a yin earth, and then a yang water and a yin water. So we have one cycle of 10 as well as the 12 animals, and that forms a 60 or sexagenarian cycle. And in our 4 pillars up here, we have in each pillar has 2 parts, and the heavenly stem part is one of those 10 elements, a yin and or yang, wood or fire, earth, one of these up here. And then in the what we call earthly branches is one of the animals. So like Gemini, you were saying at the beginning that we actually have 4 animals, and this year is the generational year of the snake. And so if you have a year of the snake in your year pillar, that can give you information about like your early childhood. And then the month is kind of like how your later adult life it is going to be like. And then the day pillar, it can represent your partner. And then the hour pillar is like your health and career and children. So I think what I'll do is go through a little bit about the relationship, and depending on what an individual has in their day pillar, um, and I can talk about how the
Can
yeah.
I interrupt you? I wonder if maybe we can send people over to like a botcha calculator so they can
Oh
figure out what
yes,
the pillars are as
yes.
we
Let
move.
me put that.
Um, and while you're looking, this might be too much, but I'm also so like a really cool thing about the hour pillars, just like the houses in astrology, like that's going to differentiate places on Earth in any given moment, right? Like, so Jen's in Toronto and I'm in California. We're a few hours different as far as the
This
clock
one that I've been
goes.
using, they upgraded their site a little bit, and oh, here it is.
I found one I thought was easy recently as well.
Okay, should I put it in the private chat? If you
Yeah, I
click on
guess
that
I
one,
can
that one
repost it.
is a little bit more detailed.
Well, you know what? I don't even see it though. I'm like clueless as to how to use this thing. Where would oh, I see private chat. Okay, yeah,
Should I put
can
it in the
repost
comments
that to the
or
comments now.
join chat?
Right. So everyone, you can go over here. You could type in your birth date and place, and then get your 4 pillars. Jen, are you willing to share yours?
Sure, I'm a day of the ox. But
And
I'm a
you were
snake here.
saying the day, and the days are, well, actually, even before we go there, so with Aries equinox, I'll call that to be global, but of course in China this would be spring equinox, right? Or maybe let's just say this February 4th, February 3rd, 4th, 5th. So in other words, Sun to 15 tropical Aquarius. There's like Ellie wrote before, that's kind of like astrological bulk, right? And the cross quarters between
Mhm.
equinoxes and solstices. Um, which month is associated with that first solar term, that beginning of spring? Is it always consistently the same animal, or does it depend on what year you're in, kind of like profections
No,
would?
it is consistent with the animal, but the heavenly stem part will change, like the element of it. So um, February 4th is tiger, and
And then we
then
go through the order,
yes,
the
and
same
then
as
March
same as it is in
4th.
the years.
Right. So that's why it's not accurate to try to equate Aries with rabbit, because March 20th to April, say 21st, that would be Aries, but rabbit would be March 4th to like April 3rd.
Right. It's really the sun at 15 degrees of a tropical sign to
Mhm.
15 degrees of the next tropical sign. It's kind of cool. Like in the Indian system, the horas divide the wheel into 24, kind of like the solar terms would. And they
Okay.
go back and forth between, well, we could use the terms yin and yang, but
Mhm.
they go like from zero Aries, it's like yang yin yang. And
Okay.
so if you look at that, so like like let me just say masculine and feminine, though I prefer saying diurnal and nocturnal, but
Sure.
most people will know masculine and feminine signs. Um, it said that like in that Indian tradition, in this division, that the first 15 degrees of a masculine sign are masculine,
Mm.
and the second 15 degrees are feminine. But the first 15 degrees of a feminine side are feminine, right? And then masculine. So what
Interesting.
ends up happening is like the first half of Aries, well, I'll just call it solar, where the second half is lunar. But then the
Yeah,
first half of Taurus is lunar and the second half is solar.
that's
So you go
beautiful.
like solar, lunar, lunar, and you
Yes.
end up
Yeah.
getting this same map where you're going from 15 degrees of a sign to 15 degrees of a sign, shifting back and forth between yin and yang qualities. So it's kind of, I don't know how old that system is in India. It's interesting. They actually use a Greek word. Horas means hours,
Right.
describe that particular division today, and I think in ancient times as well. So it's kind of interesting just to consider the possible, intermingling between cultures. But
For
there
sure.
is that association here with this Chinese system as well. Um, and so the
Yeah.
first New Year's would be tiger. Is tiger seen as a, like, this is the first animal, or is there a first?
So it's interesting because like Western astrology, it's time and cycles, and the Chinese as well. But when you offset, it becomes more robust and more accurate because you're not duplicating it. It's not so blunt or simplified. So in the order of the animals, the rat is the first one, because in the mythological folklore of the August emperor or the Buddha, they wanted to form a 12-year calendar. And this is a story that kids are told. I grew up hearing about and loving, and it's basically the Buddha or the emperor announced that there's going to hold a race to decide which of the 12 animals to honor. And so upon hearing this, all the animals were very excited. And at the time, rat and cat were best friends. And so cat, knowing its tendency to like to sleep, said to his best friend rat, make sure you wake me up so we can set out on the race together. And rat said, yes, okay, I will. And rat, being a nocturnal animal, that's why rat is 11 p.m. of the previous day to 1 a.m. woke up early and left Cat sleeping and started journeying on the race itself. And on the way, met Ox. And there's this giant river to cross over to where the emperor was. And Rat, being very smart and skillful and talented, cut a deal with Ox saying, can I hitch a ride on you? Because you're a good swimmer, I'm not. And I will, and there's variations, I will sing a song or play a little flute tune, right? And so Ox said, okay, being gentle and helpful. And so you have this little image of like the little rat sitting on Ox's head as he's like swimming across the current. And right before Ox gets to the finish line, what does Rat do? He jumps off and secures first place. So that's why Rat is the first animal in the zodiac. And Rat individuals are highly creative and intelligent. They're almost like they need their own privacy. They're very diplomatic and charming, but it's a highly creative animal, and they need their own alone time to be in their imagination. So Rat with dragon and monkey form a very creative trinity. And then after Ox got second because they didn't have a choice, Tiger, being a early rising animal and very powerful and fast, came in third. Meanwhile, and tigers can swim as well. Winter, you're right. Dog did stop to play as well as Pig. And Rabbit was kind of hopping across and slipped and was struggling around the current. And Dragon, being a mythical creature, so dragons in Feng Shui live in the mountains. So the mountain ridges, it's the dragon awakens and travels around the mountains, and mountains are very auspicious in Feng Shui because they're protective. So there's the Trinity: mountain, valley, and plain. And dragon can fly, but the Chinese dragon doesn't have wings. The actual dragon has made up of 9 animal parts, and like I said, it evolved over many, many years from that little sea serpent-shaped jade artifact to the Chinese dragon that is a benevolent creature that in the spring equinox rises to the heavens, and it's the rainmaker. So the Chinese believe that whenever there's a body of water, there's a dragon that oversees it. So the larger the body of water, the more powerful the dragon. And then in fall equinox, the dragon goes back in from the heavens and goes back down to the water. So they are linked with life force because we need rain to survive. Like back in the agricultural days, and even today, we need water. And so dragons are a mythical, benevolent symbol. And so they can fly even though they have the little fins of a carp. So Dragon saw Bunny struggling and grasping onto a log. And so Dragon, the Chinese dragons don't breathe like fire necessarily like in Game of Thrones, but it gave Rabbit a little puff of air to help Rabbit get to the other side. And so that's why Rabbit comes after, and then Dragon. So Dragon, was so dragons are very generous, but they need their spot to shine and to do things their own way. Now, meanwhile, Horse was about to cross over and got startled because Snake was like wrapped around its hoof. So Snake quickly slithered to its spot in the 6th place of the calendar, and that's where Horse comes next. And then Goat, Monkey, and Rooster work together to get on a raft. And like Winter said, Dog and Pig were on their way, and Dog saw a pond and started frolicking in the water, and Pig saw some apples and started snacking and fell asleep. So Dog said, come on, but Pig was like, I'm gonna nap. And then so Dog was 10th, 11th, and then pig woke up and went, oh my gosh, or it's really boar. And was lucky that pig got just the last spot. Now, meanwhile, all this is happening, cat kind of wakes up and realizes that rat did not wake cat up. So cat's scrambling and swimming through the water, which cats hate the water. And finally, in its dripping state, said to the emperor, did I make it? Did I make it? And sadly, all 12 spots were taken. And upon hearing that, cat quickly pounced to express his anger towards rat. And of course, rat scurried off. And that is why ever since, cat has always wanted to chase rat. So that's that mythological story in
I
the
love
order
it.
of the 12 animals.
Yeah, I've read it in another way where they're pairs, so it's really cool to hear that. And dad joke here, but that dog had to come all the way from Australia, so you can see why.
that
Towards
is
the
that
end.
a is
That's an
that a
Aussie Shepherd, right? Um, so yeah, the way this would work is, but you have to say 15 degrees of each sign, and this is tropical zodiac. That rat in the top left, that would be Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, like that, right? So like
yes, but
my
they
sun
kind of
is at
cross over. So there'll
right,
be
right,
some
15 to
Aries.
15
Yeah.
degrees. So
So
I have the sun at 0 Scorpio. So I'm going to look at the dog, which goes from 15 Libra to 15 Scorpio. And I'm like right in the middle of dog, and I have like a lot of dog. I'm in the year of the rabbit, but
oh,
I have hour of the dog, water dog, day of the water rabbit, month of the fire dog, and then year of the wood rabbit. So I just get a lot of dog and rabbit,
oh,
which
that
is
so
interesting.
and dog is very loyal, like the watchdog, but they're very vigilant. So dog, and it really depends on the elemental theory, and that is really what is the foundation of Batji and traditional Chinese medicine and Feng Shui is the elements, and each of these animals have an element of yin yang. So rat is yin water, even though it's yang because it's the first animal. Because you can go animal yang yin yang yin yang yin yang yin, but there's another layer where rat is yin water,
Mm.
ox is yin earth. So all the earth, because there are, unlike in Western astrology where 4 elements divide well into 12, 5 doesn't. So how the system works with the seasons is that you have, instead of, we know we have 3 months in a season, but in Chinese, the first 2 months are the elements. So February, March are wood, and then April is earth. So earth bookends is in between each season. So we have wood is spring season, but we have 1 month that is earth, and then summer is fire, which is June, May and June, and then you have earth, and then which is July, and then we have August, September. And so what I'm trying to say is it's the same principle where earth bookends the 2 elements. So ox, dragon, dog, and goat are earth. So tiger is yang wood and rabbit is yin wood. And then we have yang earth. So dragon is an earth. And then snake is yang fire, and horse is yin fire. And then we have goat, which is earth. And then monkey is yang metal, and rooster is yin metal. And then we have dog, which is yin earth. And then we have pig, which is yang water.
And so if you show up with pig and it's a water pig, is it just kind of a more natural way for that pig to show up than it would be for a fire pig in your
Well,
Bachi?
so it's about the elemental relationship. Yes. So A water pig would be a lot more into metaphysics, like the Dalai Lama is is a pig.
Mm.
I believe a water pig. I have to double check that. But pig individuals, like pig, if the boar, the skin of a pig is very much like humans. Like they do a lot of biomedical research, and there's similar organs. I think is it the heart of a pig is very much like the human, as well as the skin. And pigs are more intelligent, or just as intelligent as dogs, and they can live quite a long time. And so there are 5 versions of each of the animals, because there's a wood, fire, uh, earth, a metal, and a water version of each of them. So, like you
Mm.
said at the beginning, the last time we had a yin snake year was 60 years ago. So in between, we had snakes. Like we had in 2001, we had snake. I think that was like metal, and then metal or water was 2013, and then now we're in yeah, I said water snake in 2013, and now we're in wood, and then in 2037 we will have fire snake,
It's
and
interesting to
then
consider that in 65, here in the States anyway, the Civil Rights Act was signed.
and
Um,
that's when, yeah, there was a lot of riots, protests for the civil rights, and we had the assassination of Martin Luther King, as well as, I mean, of Malcolm X. I'm so sorry, and then the uh, Selma, was it Selma in Kentucky? I think the walk he had to do the walk twice, and and then was people in Georgia trying to integrate, and there was a lot of uprise against that, as well as the Vietnam War. So there was a lot of anti-Viet like there were a lot of peace protests that were going on as well at the same time, and then the U.S. had also um, sent military to Dominican Republic to avoid another Cuba.
mm.
And that's also when the first Cuban refugees were had arrived on U.S. soil, and there was an agreement between Cuba and the U.S. to allow Cubans to leave and seek residence in the U.S. So
So we
there was a lot
see
of mhm,
some cycles in the mundane story, which is
for sure.
intriguing. This is maybe Dalai Lama because I just found his birth data at Astro
Me
Data
too.
Bank, and there's
Yes.
some disagreement about the hour.
Okay.
So this is for
So
the
these are
chart at Astro Data Bank. It says
yes.
4:38 a.m. So this is from the 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. time period, but others suggest maybe being born between 5:30 and 6:30. So in the next like double hour set.
That wouldn't change his day. Like he has the pig year.
Mm-hmm.
Pig and goat and rabbit together form a wood trine that focuses on when an individual has a pig, goat, and rabbit together, it's supposed to be a very blessed trinity, because
Mm.
it brings contentment both at home and at work. And I'm pretty sure the dog and the rabbit is a very is considered. So there are relationships between the animals where they have synergy, and then some where they are like complete opposites.
Mm.
So the opposite of snake is pig, and really what their opposite is that they're completely kind of different or opposite mode of operandus.
So you referred to Dalai Lama before as a pig. I mean, not
Yeah.
as
Yeah. No,
in
but like
the Chinese
spiritually.
system of
And
animals, we should say. But so you're kind of looking at the year animal as the principal.
well, the day is so just like in Western and traditional, there was a practitioner and they had success with the technique and it caught on. So there before, so the Batji system is recognized in its full form, establishing its full form around the Song dynasty in like 960. So this is like a later form of Chinese astrology compared to the 28 lunar mansions. However, there was a practice. So at that time, initially, they were looking at the year, but then another practitioner came along and felt that the day pillar was more personalized. So that is what is practiced today. So all four of them, they describe the individual, and they also describe relationships and parts of that individual's life. So for Dalai Lama, the goat, they say, is has Buddha's blessing because the goat is so good-natured and kind-hearted. Unlike the snake, snakes make great artists and teachers and make very good listeners, but they tend to be, and this is why they make good, they have a business sense, is that they're maybe not so generous with parting with their money. But the goat individual, they'll just share, like it's a time, money, things, resources, and they're just live and let live. And so because they've got such a good natured heart, they say the Buddha blesses the goat. So the goat is just a lovely, very gentle, easygoing animal. And Shelley Wu, one of my teachers, who I don't know where she went, but she has books out there, describe the goat as the quintessential rock star. So they're very creative, highly talented. It's not that they don't work, but they have their own way and their own rhythm, and they need to feel relaxed and not pressured. So they're like the one, they need to be inspired, whereas the ox is a work farm animal. You know, it's used to plowing the fields early in the morning, day in, day out, from sunrise to sunset, repeat. It's very rigid, like it likes to be scheduled and
That's
have
cool how
things.
it aligns with Capricorn because that sounds like a similar vibe, or at least like in traditional astrology, the
Sure.
Saturn signs, right? Because it would be 15 Capricorn to 15
Yeah,
Aquarius. That would be
yeah,
like Saturnian
yes,
animal.
yes, yes.
Um, I love as well that like the year and the month will be global because that's really about where the sun is in the solar terms. And so that's like signs. But the day and the hour are more like houses, so they're more local, right? I mean, obviously many places on earth will be in the same day, but not all of them, like places where the sun has not yet risen are kind of a day behind, right? But the hour would be the most particular to your local place on earth. I met a practitioner that only uses Beijing time, and so they'll convert your birth time to
Uh,
Beijing time,
I
and I thought
was,
that was weird.
yeah, I was taught to use local time, and I think that makes more sense
Yeah,
because then we are all because this is apparently tied to the constellations. So I think it's relative to where you are geographically. And it doesn't make sense that the monkey hour is the same everywhere because
yeah,
we all have different relationships to that circumpolar.
yeah. I totally agree. I wouldn't want somebody working on like the Oregon clock for another time zone when I'm receiving a acupressure or puncture treatment or whatever.
Yeah,
Uh,
right. Yeah.
Speaking of dragon, a retrograde here, but when you were describing kind of the dragons seasonally, though they weren't looking at Draco as a dragon in that constellational map you showed before, if you do follow Draco throughout the course of the year, the way that Draco is addressing like the land and the heavens is gonna shift seasonally, just depending on where the sun is. So that was kind of an interesting thing to see as well. I want to address, speaking of seasons, Winter asked, what's the deal with like male and female? I noticed that if I change, like
Yes.
the hour, day, month, and year remain the same, but this
Right.
system down
Right.
beneath shifts.
Yes. So what's neat about, I was saying this site has upgraded or revised. So this is the new version. And what they've done is they've taken your predictive cycle. So in the Chinese Bachi, there's a 10-year life cycle, which looks at your life in decades. And so each person's decade is going to start at a different age. So for example, somebody who's not the Dalai Lama has a different day. They might start at 5 to 15, and it'll be 25, 35, 45. Dalai Lama, his decades are 1 to 11, and then 21, 31, 41. And so each decade is governed by a pillar. And that's what they're showing, and how it's calculated. And I apologize because back then it was very binary. So there's a different connection, calculation. If it's yang, you count forward. And if it's yin, you count backwards. So yin being what they're saying is female, and then yang. But I think they even have a neutral now, which I think I noticed in their
Yeah, they do, and
yeah,
on this day, but maybe it's not the same on every day. But on
right,
this day, the neutral was the same as the female.
okay.
But maybe on different days, that's different. It'd be interesting to find out. But when you say count forward, like this would be forward, right? Like snake, dragon.
No, sorry. Yeah. So there's a sexagenary calendar or cycle that basically lists every combination of, like, starting from the beginning is going to be yang wood rat, and then yin wood ox, and then it's going to go through all the variations to the very end, which will be like yin yang water pig.
But this
Yin water
one's
pig.
snake, dragon, rabbit, tiger. So
Yes.
this is like
So
for males,
yeah,
kind of going backward through the sequence. Yeah,
I
you know
think
what's interesting
forward,
is like
forward.
we often call that moon wise, right? Because the
Hmm.
moon moves through the
Yeah.
constellations most quickly, whereas the sun most dramatically moves through the houses. Um,
Yeah.
oh, maybe I'm getting that kind of backwards, trying to mix these streams.
No, it makes sense. In that calendar, if it's yang, where you start counting is forwards in the sexagenary cycle, and female, you go backwards. But the computer, the software does it for you. But if
Yeah.
um, I come back another time, which I'd love to, I can share more about that and go into the details of exactly what they're doing.
Well, and even more importantly, folks, you can reach out to Jen for an individualized session. And many of those of you who gather with me here on Wednesdays for Storytelling Hour speak tropical astrology or Western astrology, whatever in general. And so this is a practitioner who knows the Bachi, but also can translate in some regards to a language that maybe you already speak in regards to these mysteries. So reach out to Jen. You'll find her at jeningress.com. Before you start typing any web address, why don't you like this video and share it around to
Please.
friends and fam who
Yeah.
might enjoy and get to learn a thing or two. Jen, I've learned a ton today, and I'm just so grateful for you
Oh,
coming
it's a
here and
pleasure.
spending some time with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh, it's my absolute honor. So Winter says, I would love to learn the
Yeah, I
particulars of
also
the
teach.
astrological system. Right on cue.
Yeah,
So
I
Jen
teach.
shares she also teaches, and that's
Yeah.
something people can find at your website for mentorship.
Yeah, you can email me. It's not listed in terms of like course dates, but if you email me, um, I can respond.
Wonderful. Jen, thank you so much. Happy New Year to you.
Yes, and likewise, Gong Hei Fat Choi, San Tai Kin Hong, which means wishing you a prosperous and healthy year ahead.
All right, friends. Sending you all the love. By the way, next week we will have another guest on board, PK, who I kind of met through the chat here at Storytelling Hour when I was talking base 12 system last week. And PK and I met just for a little while yesterday. I wish I had just gone live with it. So I was like, hey, next time we meet, let's just meet at Storytelling Hour. So that's going to happen next week. We decided the title should be the first thing that PK told me, which is that spirit means breath. And I really heard that today when you were speaking about dragon kind of breathing the rabbit forward. So it was really nice to experience that synchronicity. So I hope to see you next week at Storytelling Hour. In between, for folks who are in the Constellations community, please know that Phelan Shiva is gathering everyone together at 4 p.m. Pacific today for our Astro Tarot Circle. And of course, we have our regularly scheduled community discussions, including All Lead discussion this Saturday at 9 a.m. So if you're in Constellations, I hope I get to spend some time and hear from you there. If you were here, let's also talk about some of these animals and what they mean to you and what you've found. Please book a reading with Jen. Support the work. You can find out more about Constellations, by the way, at my website, which is GeminiBrett.com. Just head over there and click the communities tab if you would like to learn more and to spend some time on the mic. All right, Jen, it's great to see you. I hope I get to see you on Earth again sometime soon. Will you be at
Me
Norwalk?
too. Are you gonna be?
I will be. Yeah.
Okay, I will. More incentive to go.
Oh, that's sweet to hear. Yeah, Norwalk is a wonderful conference in the Northwest if y'all
Okay,
haven't heard about it. But I know I'll get
I
to share the
wanted
stage with
to
you
go.
sometime in the future on the
Likewise,
beach.
can I join the Constellations chat? Is it open to?
It's $16 a month. I'm happy to
Okay,
bring you in there. Let's talk about it because Jen and I are gonna do a trade, which I'm so excited about. So I'll be seeing you on the email. Would love to bring you in there for sure.
awesome.
All right.
Bye,
Bye, Jen.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Be well.